So, why was the tree in the garden in the first place? To put it into perspective, it's like a loving father creating the perfect environment for his newborn child to live and grow, but then puts a chocolate bar in the middle of the house that he has injected with poison. Would not a loving father protect his children from death rather than putting it in the middle of their habitat? Let's find out on today's episode of Defending a Friend. The key to understanding the tree of knowledge is to understand God's law. Do you see and understand God's law as the design parameters upon which life is constructed, like the law of gravity, the law of thermodynamics? Or do you consider God's law to be rules like human laws with no inherent consequence, like traffic laws or immigration laws? These kind of laws have no inherent consequence for breaking them, except as arbitrarily determined, legislated, or enforced. If we consider God's laws like human laws, then we look at the garden and wonder, what's going on? We falsely conclude that God was setting them up, or God introduced something harmful in their path, just waiting for them to stumble over it. But there was nothing poisonous about the fruit. It was not physically harmful in any way. So the analogy of the poison chocolate bar doesn't really work. The comparison makes it appear that something dangerous was put into the garden. But this was not so. The tree was not dangerous or deadly. What was dangerous and deadly was to break trust with God, to believe lies and act on them, to deviate from His design for life, and to choose to change themselves from humans operating upon perfect love to humans operating upon fear and selfishness. God desired that His new creation was going to be eternally settled into the truth about Him, so that nothing could ever shake them. He desired for them to live in harmony with His laws, but this required them to think, evaluate, consider, and ultimately choose for themselves what they believed in. They must form their own character. They were perfect, but they were inexperienced, naive, and needed to develop their own beliefs based on the exercise of their own abilities. Therefore, the tree was not put in the garden to tempt them, but to protect and ennoble them. Look, Adam and Eve were created in God's image with the ability to love, develop, and advance based on free will choices. The tree provided for this development while at the same time protecting them from constant harassment. Now let me explain. Satan could only approach them at the tree. If they chose to go anywhere else on the planet, they were free from constant assault and temptation. Only at the tree could Satan seek to deceive them. The tree also provided them with the opportunity to exercise their individuality and freedom of choice, and to consider the issues for themselves and to come to their own conclusion and act upon it. If they had chosen to side with God and rejected the lies, they would have matured, grown, developed, and advanced, just as God designed and intended, but instead they chose to believe the lies and rebel. God in love educated them, warned them of the dangers of deviating from His design. However, they chose selfishness instead of love. They chose to believe the lies instead of truth. And human history demonstrates the devastating consequences of this choice.